There is a strange truth about human beings that most people never realize. We spend our entire lives surrounded by others, talking, listening, reacting, forming opinions, building relationships. And yet, despite all of that, most of us don't actually understand the people around us. We think we do. We believe we do. But what we're really doing is something very different. We're not seeing people as they truly are. We're seeing them through the lens of our own fears, desires, insecurities, memories, and expectations. When you look at someone, you aren't seeing the real them. You are seeing a version of them that has been filtered through your own mind. Your brain fills in missing details, makes assumptions, connects patterns, and creates a narrative that feels complete. But that narrative is rarely the full reality. This is why two people can observe the exact same person and walk away with completely different impressions. One might describe them as confident, another as arrogant. One might see them as quiet and thoughtful, another as cold and distant. The difference isn't in the person being observed, it's in the observer. Every person you think you know exists in two versions: the real person and the version of them that lives in your head. And most of the time, those two versions are not the same. Once you understand this, the way you look at people begins to change. You start to realize that misunderstandings are not exceptions. They are the default state of human interaction. You start to see how easily assumptions form, how quickly judgments are made, and how rarely people pause to question their own perception. And something interesting happens when you become aware of this. You stop expecting everyone to understand you perfectly. You stop feeling confused or offended when someone misunderstands you, because you realize they are not actually seeing you. They are seeing a projection shaped by their own inner world. And, strangely enough, this realization brings a sense of relief, because it frees you from the impossible task of trying to control how everyone sees you. But misunderstanding others isn't the only illusion we live with. There's another one that runs even deeper. Most people believe they make decisions logically. They believe they analyze information, weigh evidence, and reach conclusions through rational thought. But the truth is far less flattering. Emotion almost always comes first. Logic comes second. A feeling arises: attraction, fear, comfort, unease. And that feeling quietly guides the decision. Only afterward does the mind construct a logical explanation to justify the choice. Logic, in most cases, is not the driver. It is the storyteller. This is why people can look at the same facts and reach completely opposite conclusions. Because the facts are filtered through emotional needs, past experiences, and internal fears. It's why arguing rarely changes minds. Because when you challenge someone's opinion, you're not just confronting their reasoning. You're confronting the emotional foundation that supports it. And people will almost always protect that foundation, even in the face of contradictory evidence. This doesn't make people irrational or foolish. It simply makes them human. Understanding this changes how you communicate. It teaches you that if you want to understand someone, or be understood by them, you must pay attention to the emotion beneath their words, not just the words themselves. There's also something most people misunderstand about helping others. When someone shares a problem, we often assume they're asking for a solution. So we jump in quickly, offering advice, trying to fix things. trying to remove their discomfort. But that's not always what they're looking for. Often, what people truly want is not a solution, but acknowledgement. They want to feel heard. They want to feel understood. Trying to fix someone's problem too quickly can make them feel dismissed, as if their struggle is simply an inconvenience that needs to be solved as efficiently as possible. Listening, truly listening, is far more powerful than most people realize. Listening without rushing to respond. Listening without judgment. Listening without the urge to correct or fix. When someone feels genuinely understood, the effect is profound. In a world where everyone wants to speak, the person who knows how to listen becomes rare. And because they are rare, they become unforgettable. The first step to understanding people is accepting that what you see is not the whole truth. The second step is learning to look beneath the surface, at the emotions, fears, and motivations that shape every action. And once you begin doing that, you start to notice something unsettling. Most people are not nearly as confident, secure, or certain as they appear. In fact, some of the loudest, most forceful people are often the most insecure. Because when someone is truly confident, they don't need to prove it constantly. They don't need to dominate conversations, win every argument, or always be the one who's right. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't require validation. But insecurity is loud. It demands recognition. It tries to take up space. It pushes back against any perceived threat. When you see someone trying to overpower every conversation or correct every minor mistake, you are often not seeing strength. You are seeing fear. Fear of being overlooked, fear of being judged, fear of not being enough. And recognizing that fear changes the way you see people. The need to protect one's identity is one of the strongest forces that shapes human behavior. People do not just defend their opinions, they defend the image they have built of themselves. When someone is confronted with information that threatens that identity, the mind does not react with curiosity. It reacts with defense. It doesn't matter if the evidence is logical or obvious. If accepting it means admitting that a core belief was wrong, the mind will resist. This is why debates rarely change minds, because most disagreements are not battles between facts, they are battles between identities. When you challenge a person's belief, you are often challenging the foundation of how they see themselves, and that feels like a threat, even if no harm is intended. Understanding this helps you see why people react so strongly to ideas that feel personal. It's not always stubbornness. Often, it's self-preservation. And once you understand that, arguments stop looking like battles of intelligence and start looking like struggles for identity. The desire for control follows a similar pattern. People who crave control are not trying to dominate for the sake of power. Most of the time, they are trying to avoid fear. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. It creates anxiety. It makes people feel vulnerable. So they try to control situations, outcomes, and sometimes even people around them, hoping that control will protect them from discomfort. But life cannot be controlled completely. And the more someone tries to control everything, the more anxious they become. Because the world inevitably behaves in ways that cannot be predicted or controlled. The need for control often grows from a fear of being overwhelmed. It is not confidence, it is a defense mechanism. Once you see this, controlling behavior stops looking like strength and starts looking like fear in disguise. Silence is another force that reveals more than most people realize. Silence makes many people uncomfortable, not because silence itself is unpleasant, but because silence removes distractions. When everything is quiet, the mind has nowhere to hide. Thoughts that have been ignored begin to surface. Feelings that have been buried start to rise. This is why people instinctively try to fill silence with noise, talking, music, scrolling, anything that prevents them from facing their own thoughts. Silence is not empty. It is revealing, and that is what makes it uncomfortable. But for those who learn to sit with silence, something changes. They begin to see parts of themselves that were previously hidden. They start recognizing patterns in their own thoughts, emotions, and reactions. Silence becomes a mirror. There is also a quiet truth about memory that shapes how people experience life. People do not remember events as they happened. They remember how those events made them feel. Memory is not an accurate record of reality. It is a reconstruction influenced by emotion. This is why two people can experience the same moment and remember it completely differently. Each person encodes the experience through their own emotional state. Over time, the details fade, but the feelings remain. This is why the emotional impact of an interaction matters far more than the specific words spoken. People might forget what you said, but they rarely forget how you made them feel. Every person you meet carries something you cannot see. On the surface, most people look fine. They wake up, they work, they smile, they interact with others. They appear to be functioning. But beneath that surface, almost everyone is carrying some form of private struggle. It might be fear of failure, grief from a past loss, anxiety about the future, a sense of not being enough, or a quiet loneliness that never fully disappears. These struggles are rarely visible. People have learned to hide them behind routine, behind humor, behind the need to keep moving forward. This is why compassion matters. Because you rarely know what someone is carrying inside. And sometimes, the smallest act of understanding can have a far deeper impact than you realize. When you begin to see these hidden layers in others, you also begin to notice something unsettling within yourself. You start to realize that you, too, are not as self-aware as you thought. Most people believe they understand themselves. They believe they know their motives, their fears, their weaknesses, and their patterns. But the mind has an incredible ability to hide uncomfortable truths. It edits memories. It justifies contradictions. It protects the ego. This means that many of the forces shaping your behavior operate outside of your conscious awareness, and that realization can be uncomfortable, because it suggests that the image you hold of yourself is not entirely accurate. There are parts of you that you haven't fully acknowledged, patterns you haven't fully recognized, and fears you haven't fully confronted.
But recognizing this is the first step toward deeper understanding.
And this is where true self-awareness begins. Not with confidence, not with certainty, but with discomfort. The moment you realize you don't fully know yourself is the moment real understanding becomes possible. Because from that point forward, you stop defending an image and start observing reality, even when that reality is uncomfortable. You begin to notice your own contradictions. You begin to recognize the patterns that repeat in your behavior. You begin to understand that your reactions are not random. They come from experiences, fears, and beliefs that were shaped long before you became aware of them. This kind of self-awareness is not easy. It requires admitting things you'd rather ignore. It requires facing parts of yourself you'd rather hide. But the reward is clarity. And clarity changes how you move through the world. When you start seeing yourself more honestly, you begin to see others more clearly as well. You notice when someone is reacting from fear rather than logic. You notice when someone is trying to protect their ego instead of pursuing truth. You notice when someone is acting from insecurity rather than malice. And when you recognize these patterns in others, you stop taking things as personally. You stop assuming that every harsh word is a reflection of you. You stop believing that every rejection is about your worth. You start understanding that most of the time, people are reacting to their own inner battles, not to you. This shift in perspective is powerful, because once you see people through this lens, anger begins to soften into understanding, and judgment begins to give way to compassion. But there is also a more unsettling consequence to this awareness. Once you understand how much of human behavior is driven by fear, insecurity, and unconscious patterns, you can never again view people the same way. You start to notice how often people act without understanding their own motives. You start to see how frequently people repeat patterns they don't recognize. You start to understand how much suffering comes not from external events, but from internal misunderstanding. This can feel heavy at first, because clarity removes certain comforts. It removes the comfort of simple explanations. It removes the comfort of blaming everything on external circumstances. It removes the comfort of believing that you are fully in control of your own mind. But it also brings something deeper. It brings the ability to respond rather than react, to understand rather than judge, to pause rather than be swept away by emotion. And in that pause, real choice begins. Understanding human nature does not make you detached from the world. It makes you more aware of it. You begin to see the hidden fears behind confident voices. You begin to see the silent doubts behind bold actions. You begin to recognize the quiet longing for connection behind so many behaviors that seem irrational on the surface. And once you understand this, your interactions with others begin to change. You stop expecting perfection. You stop demanding that people fit your expectations. You start allowing space for complexity, both in others and in yourself. This does not mean excusing harmful behavior. It does not mean ignoring wrongdoing. It means understanding the roots of behavior rather than only reacting to the surface. When you understand why people behave the way they do, you become less easily shaken by their actions. You become more deliberate in your own responses. You start noticing your own reactions before they take control. You start recognizing the impulses that once ran your life without your awareness. You begin to see the difference between reacting automatically and choosing intentionally. And that awareness is one of the most powerful changes a person can experience. There is a quiet strength that comes from understanding. It does not make you immune to pain. It does not make you immune to confusion. But it gives you the ability to see beyond immediate emotion. And in that space, that small distance between feeling and action, freedom exists. Not the freedom to control everything, not the freedom to avoid pain entirely, but the freedom to understand yourself and others more deeply. And once that freedom is experienced, it cannot be forgotten. Because once you truly see the invisible forces shaping human behavior, fear, identity, insecurity, emotion, desire for belonging, the world can no longer appear simple. And although that realization can feel heavy, it also carries a strange sense of peace. Because even though you can no longer return to ignorance, you gain something far more valuable: the ability to see clearly. And clarity, once gained, stays with you.